Some vengeance takes 20 years. Got the money back in the end, and also some regretful tears. Not my story, but my father's. Also, English isn't my first language, so I apologize for any mistakes. TLDR at the end. This story is about my grandma, my father's mother. Let's call her Ellen. Ellen has always hated my mother. I think one reason is because my father and his family is very white. They aren't racist, but I think deep down she is a bit. But the other reason is because my mother doesn't take poop from anyone. Examples of things Ellen did and my mother didn't like. 1. Going inside the home of my parents and start opening their letters. 2. Shitting on the tiniest piece of dirt in their home, even she isn't Mr. Clean. 3. Trying to pin everything that goes wrong on my mother, even things my dad or I chose to do. Oh, I bet that was the idea of your stupid mother. 4. Trying and succeeding to take the first children of my mother away. That's another long story. 5. Then trying to take me away but backing out because I'm pretty sure my mom would have ended her this time. Lol, I don't blame her, I would too. 6. Telling my whole family I was lying when her internet boyfriend tried to do things to me as a 7-year-old, you just shouldn't do. So anyway, you get the idea. A horrible person. No one was good enough for her son, my dad. When my mom and dad got their first child together, my brother Jude, he looked a lot more like my mother. My mother's biological father was as black, her biological mother was white. I always like to call her skin tone cappuccino with a tiny bit of milk, haha. She also has tiny gorgeous curls I'm a bit jealous of. My dad on the other hand is just white, straight brown hair, brown eyes. Jude is a lot darker than my mother, but has her curls and looks overall not very much white, like my dad. So Ellen was convinced that my mother must have cheated and Jude couldn't possibly be the child of my father and her grandchild. She didn't let the topic go, and back at the time, my dad was still very attached to his family. He was only 18 and my mother was 21. So when Ellen wouldn't stop bothering my father to do a paternity test, he finally said he would do it, but only if she paid it, if Jude turned out to be his son. So she agreed. He did the test, which cost about $2,000 today. It was another currency back then, but still very expensive. The only reason my parents had the money was because they were saving for a wedding. My mother originally didn't want to get married, but my father was very good at changing her mind. He fell in love with her when he was only 14 and wouldn't stop confessing his love and singing cringy love songs until she finally gave in. 4 years later, haha, still together to this day. So the test came back and surprise, surprise, he was the father. So he wanted the money back, because it was a huge chunk of money, not only for the wedding but they just had a baby. If she gave him the money, we wouldn't be here today. So she didn't, even though she had the money. My grandparents were pretty wealthy back then. My mother was super hurt, and a real wedding, with a dress and in a church like my father wanted, was totally cancelled. The only reason my mother married my dad 12 years later and not in a church but in like the town hall? I don't know how it's called in English, but you just sign something and you're married. No long talks or guest, food or a pretty church or even a dress, was because I was really annoying as a child. I always wanted my parents to be married and it got them some benefits, like with taxes and for medical emergencies and so on. So of course my dad was bitter about it, really bitter. But the revenge part would take more than 20 years. Last year my whole family got into e-bikes. Literally everyone got one. First my dad used the one of Ellen, but he wanted his own. Due to a really bad credit score he couldn't get one on his name or my mother, and because he is her favorite son, he talked Ellen into getting him one. Of course he would pay her every month back. I think you can see where this is going. So she buys him an expensive e-bike, almost the price of the paternity test, and my dad paid the first month, maybe even the second. But then stops. Ellen starts complaining, even before he stops paying to everyone in the family. He isn't paying. That stupid wife of him is robbing me of my money. It's not like she even needed the money. Her pension is very generous and she's in another country for vacation almost every 3 months for weeks. Of course my father knows why he stopped paying, but because she wouldn't stop complaining to everybody, he had to remind her. So the next time she brought it up, he straight up reminded her of the time, over 20 years ago, where she forced him to take that stupid test, didn't pay him back like she said she would, and destroyed not only the wedding but also their savings and a part of their relationship. I don't know if she thought somehow my dad would forget something like this or the other stuff she pulled, just to somehow break them off. She started tearing up and got really quiet. I really wish I was there to take a photo of that shiny little tear of regret and realization, but oh well. So she paid for the bike in silence, and no one of us has heard her talking about my father or mother who wouldn't pay her for the bike anymore. Redditor's reaction story 2 after. Redditor 1, OMG, that's awesome. I hope he told everybody why. 2. Redditor 2, in the US, a marriage performed by a judge is a civil ceremony. Usually done at the courthouse with a couple of witnesses, which could be court employees. There may or may not be a reception afterwards. One can hire a judge to perform it at another location, but that would cost extra. Redditor follow-up, that was indeed how my first wedding happened. We paid a JP to perform the ceremony at my wife's parents' house. Redditor 3, wait, so what happened to Jude? I'm really intrigued, sorry. Story 2, herbicide as a weapon. When I lived in the far north of Canada, I heard this story. I believe it is true. There are a lot of mining camps in the north where men work 3-4 weeks on and 3-4 weeks off. A man came back to camp and told his friend, "You had better get back to town, your wife is cheating on you." So the husband came home, and sure enough, she was. They decided to divorce. The husband behaved well and the divorce went through easily. He signed the house over to the house they had kids. It took some time to get everything settled. The last thing the husband did before he signed the house over to the wife was, he purchased industrial strength herbicide and spread it on the front lawn, spelling the word whore, and watered it in. It took some time to show up, as in the north, spring takes some time to arrive. Apparently the soil in the front yard had to be replaced several times before whore disappeared. Redditor's reaction story 3 after. Redditor 1, herbicide or salt are terrible. Instead, use fertilizer. Less is more. You don't want to burn the lawn, just have an area that's darker green and grows faster. It can last all year. Extra points if you fill a super soaker or lawn sprayer with liquid fertilizer or Miracle Grow and draw pictures. Redditor 2, just using salt will have the same effect. Redditor 3, where I used to work there were 4 neighbors who pooled money to install a borehole to get water for the garden, so as to keep the water bill down. So after a few years the one goes on vacation for a month, and the other comes around, as all 4 worked the same area, and asked all of us, not neighbors, but work colleagues, to give him some money. We all asked why, and he said that X had asked him to water the lawn well, so he was going to do so, but also wanted the money to bug 3 bags of fertilizer for the lawn as well. Yes, we all ponied up, and the lawn was fertilized, and the sprinkler was left on for 3 weeks, 24 hours a day, moved twice a day to cover the entire yard. At the end of 3 weeks that grass was well past knee height, and growing really luxuriantly, with all the water and fertilizer on it, totally covering the entire yard. At the end of the holiday, X arrived back Sunday afternoon late, and needed 3 hours to mow the tiny strip of grass that was in the driveway, so he could park his car, and to get a path to the house. The Monday he came in and was absolutely unhappy, but deflated when asked if the lawn was green, and well watered. Wednesday he went and borrowed a tractor mower, so as to be able to cut the lawn back down to height so the dogs and children would not get lost in it, even with the local buck doing their best to mow it already. 2 months later he came in and thanked us, as a month after he got back water restrictions were announced, so no lawn watering at all, and his was the only green one when the annual lawn competition was held a month after that. His only problem was that he had to mow twice a week, Wednesday and Saturday, which interfered with his golf days. Story 3, my buddy said he was going to KLL the man who was sleeping with his wife. Apologies for the length, I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but some context is needed. We are talking about murder here, even if petty. Back in circa 2000 I was a US Navy corpsman attached to a Marine Corps infantry unit. We docs are the healthcare providers who are embedded with the Marines, acting as paramedics, nurses, moms to the Marines. Every 6 months one of the 4 battalions on our base would deploy routinely to Okinawa, and we would leave behind Okinawa widows. We literally got a speech by our company gunny when we arrived in Okinawa: what happens on this island, stays on this island. I found the speech sickening, but I was 21 and unmarried, so I didn't give it much thought. For those of you who never served in the US military, adultery is a pretty serious crime, as we have our own criminal justice system and the punishment is disproportionately inflicted on the most junior of our ranks. 6 months after our deployment we returned to our Sandy base in the desert of Southern California, and my buddy discovers that his wife had been cheating on him. Me, my buddy, and his wife were all E4 third-class petty officers, but buddy's wife was sleeping with a Marine gunny E7. My buddy was obviously furious. He did all the right things, he reported it to our chain of command, his wife's chain of command, the gunny's chain of command. But nothing happened. His complaints fell on deaf ears. Which is pretty ducked up, because if he had been sleeping with a gunny's wife, he would have been most definitely punished. Distraught and defeated, a bunch of us were trying to console him one night at the enlisted club on base over beers. With tears in his eyes he looks up to the ceiling and declares, "I'm gonna KLL that son of a bitch." Now, my buddy isn't the most military of our squad. He's a bit overweight and much more into video games than violence. After all, we were all corpsmen, the medical caregivers, many of us were non-combatants. Chill out, dude. You're not going to KLL him or anyone. Yeah, you're probably right. He replied. Fast forward to about a month later. We're all in the aid station for morning roll call, but Buddy isn't there. He finally shows up just before lunch and I notice he's been demoted to E3. He looks upset. We gather around him. Dude, what the hell? I told you, I was going to KLL him. You didn't KLL anyone. I retort. If you did, you wouldn't be sitting in that chair to tell us. What happened? I told you. I KL'd him. Buddy was in charge of our health records computer system, which was connected to the base hospital. The day after we had the beers where he declared he would KLL the gunny. He went into the health records system and changed the gunny's status to deceased, cause of death, venereal disease. 3 weeks after he changed gunny's record, the gunny went for a checkup and the hospital staff was very confused. And when the gunny found out he was dead and how he died, there was an investigation. So my buddy got charged and seen convicted of conduct unbecoming or whatever. He got demoted a rank, lost half his pay for 6 months, and had extra duty assigned for 6 months. Worth it. He said with a smile. Redditors' reactions. Redditor 1, dude, that sucks for your buddy so much. Not the punishment, seems fair for his little revenge. But the fact he came home to that. He should have immediately requested MAST. A SNCO that would do that is sickening. None of that intra-branch stuff either. Corpsmen are one of us. I mean, a gunny who sleeps with fellow enlisted man's wife, when his duty should be protecting people from that sort of slimeball poop. I couldn't trust a man like that to have my back, ever. And his cock should realize that someone with so little integrity would never be a leader. Ducking disappointing. Op answer, welcome to the military. We have many different kinds of disappointment. Edit, he did request MAST. At all 3 commands, hers, his, and the gunny's. All 3 wanted nothing to do with it. Even our own company gunny brought it up to our CO and got turned away. It was really poopty. Redditor 2, I'm not sure whether it was worth it. What exactly did it achieve? Redditor follow up, probably a lot of bureaucracy. Killing someone is easy, reviving them is not. Just imagine all the different systems that may have received an automatic deceased notification. Insurance, government, credit card or other banking institutions. They are not flexible at all and would probably require rooms of paperwork to somehow rectify whatever got messed up in the name of following their checklists and guidelines. Redditor 3, why are people always mad about the person that's sleeping with their so anyway? Yeah, it sucks, but that person might not have known about you after all. Be mad at your partner for betraying you in the first place. Op answer, I very much agree with you. But, we're talking about the military. And, not just the military, US Marines. The same place where yelling kill is the same as yelling sir. Yes. Sir. There is so much machismo. Oh, he was mad at her. He reported both of them. But, neither got punished. You threaten to KLL your wife, the squad is not going to stand for that at all. You threaten to KLL another man for sleeping with your wife, even if ducked up, it's a bit more socially acceptable.